The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. Canadian universities are not-for-profit corporations that are, in essence, autonomous from governments despite their reliance on government funding. In the 60s and 70s, government funding drove expansion at universities such as UBC. But then funding levels from government started to decrease, forcing universities to seek other forms of funding. The sources of new revenue included tuition fee increase, bequests, non-government grants, and investments, and the selling of seats to foreign students. It wasn't enough. Government funding grants continued to drop, forcing universities to find innovative solutions to increase revenue. Enter UBC alumni Bob Lee, says Aubrey Kelly, the CEO of UBC Property Trust. Bob proposed a new funding mechanism that would provide the university with revenue in perpetuity, the 99-year lease. Bob Lee, in an interview in 2010, said, "We put in the roads and services and put in the lots, and then we put them up for tender, and no one put in a bid." Well, fast forward to today, the trust has built over 12 million square feet of space for UBC and delivered more than $2 billion to the university and counting. I invited Aubrey Kelly of UBC Property Trust to join me for a conversation that matters about the power of innovative thinking to address housing issues, which are important here in British Columbia, and also support universities. Aubrey, welcome.
Thank you.
This really is innovative thinking, isn't it? Even though it's been around for a while now, it still is remarkable thinking. What do you think is the genius of the idea here?
And I think that the fact the university gets to harvest the value again in 99 years, or perhaps even in advance of that, if the underlying densities get so great in the meantime that we're able to actually go in and keep tenants whole from a value perspective and start to issue new leases, they're going to be able to do this all over again, and probably before that initial 99 years that Bob had envisioned.
So how does this work for the person who takes on the lease? Because sometimes you go, okay, well, when the lease expires, I'm out in the cold. But there's a mechanism that's built into the UBC Properties Trust that ensures that the leaseholder still remains in a position where they can either have what is equal or similar to equity or continue on. Do I have that correct?
So if the two parties can't come to an agreement on a lease extension, then the tenant or the homeowner is owed the improvements to for the value of the improvements to the land, but the land on the last day of the lease has no more value to the homeowner, because as the lease expires on the last day, technically speaking, when you get an assessment for your tax notice on your house, it's always broken into a couple different pieces. There's always the land and the value of the land, and then there's what's called the improvements to the land. So that's a house or a barn or anything that's built on top of that. And then there's the value of the improvements. So on the last day of the lease, the value to the homeowner of the land is reduced to zero because the lease is expiring, but the improvements still have a value. And so if an extension cannot be agreed to, then we are owing that homeowner for the value of the market value of the improvements.
So in essence, you're buying the building back.
Buying the building back, but not buying the land back.
Right. But the leaseholder is still in a position where they can then extend that lease, or if they choose to do so.
We may come to an agreement on a lease extension. However, if it's a wood frame building in 100 years' time, it could be that we're wanting to redevelop. Also, I'm guessing that in 100 years' time, the acceptable density levels that we'll be going after and that will be in vogue at that time will be much higher than they are today. So it will incent the university to redevelop it likely into a much denser form than it was 35 years ago.
I can only imagine. So, I mean, we're seeing density pressures right now. Off the top, I was talking about what a success this is. Has it really, is it or am I overblowing it, or am I understating just how important this is?
No, I don't think you could understate the importance that this idea has been for UBC. Bob Lee always said that he would hope that one day we would get to the endowment, that value that would come from this endeavor would reach $1 billion. And we're not 40 years in yet. We're approaching 40 years, but we're only about 35 years and a little over 35 years, and we've more than doubled what his vision was going in of $1 billion. So I think it can't be overstated, really, the importance that this has been. And that's just from a financial aspect. There are, of course, other benefits to the university that are non-financial benefits that were part of Bob's vision as well.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I referenced a clip that I happen to have from Bob in an interview that I did with him a number of years ago, and we were talking about this. And in it, he sort of said, well, I projected that maybe we could get to $1 billion, and then maybe I better be careful not to over-project. So he scaled it way back. But, actually, I'd like to just play that clip so that we get a sense of just how innovative he was, and also for us to pay tribute to his remarkable thinking. Sure. Derek, can you play that clip of Bob Lee?
I said, in the future, you need income, discretionary income, to help the university hire the best professors. So to make a long story short, I said, we won't sell the land. Well, being in the real estate business, leased land is not attractive. But I said, for the university, I have my university hat on, for university, it's got to be leased land. Now, how do you make it attractive? You've got to pay for the improvements at the end of the lease. Whereas the other leases, you lose everything. So we put that in the clause. So at the end of 99 years, if UBC ever wants land back, they have to pay you for the improvements at market. Okay, so now I went to the bank and borrowed $5 million from the Royal Bank, and he said, well, what's the security? I said, I got 28 acres. And he says, what's the value? I says, look, we're gonna build 1.2 FSR on that site. So the value is $10 million. I want to borrow $5 million. So they gave me $5 million. We put in all the road services, divided into 10 sites. Then we went out for tender in '89. We put in all the road service, everything, and made it very attractive, because it's important that you put a lot of infrastructure to make people say, I want to live here. So in '89, went out for tender. No one tendered. So I said, and some of the developers phoned me and they said, Bob, it's not going to work. I said, look, if it doesn't work, we go back to freehold. But I got to give it a try. To make a long story short, was so successful that all the builders around there came in, bid on the second, third, fourth site. And to make a long story short, we created $81 million. I presented a check to Martha Piper for $81 million, and we still own the land. So now I said to myself, I think we could make that $1 billion.
So remarkable to see his enthusiasm about that innovative thinking. But as with everything, it comes with challenges. How challenging was it in those early days to get this started and to start to realize that vision that he had?
It was a relatively novel thing in our industry to build strata-titled condominiums for sale on a what was a leasehold interest in a piece of land, and so he, as Bob says, we put the piece out for bid, the first site, and all the local developers, sort of where I would describe it, it's like bunch of people sitting around a swimming pool, and someone says, hey, you know what, the water's okay, but no one's wanting to be the first person in because they think, maybe it's too cold, and they were waiting for that first person to jump in and then say, hey, you know what, actually the water is okay, and we can actually operate, we can swim in this environment. So they waited until someone that was familiar with leasehold development. Bob actually ended up going to Hong Kong and found one of a developer acquaintance that he knew in Hong Kong that was used to the lease model. That developer came and demonstrated to the local community that it was okay to, basically, I think the issue was that the local developers were worried that this wasn't market tested in terms of the buyer, the end buyer. So they understood the legalities of this, they understood the issues, but they were worried. We build a building, we open up a sales center, we start to do pre-sales on a project, and they're worried that just no one's going to line up and buy these things. So they watched the first project get built, get sold, was successful, and as you know, as Bob says in the clip, that was the challenge of the first site. And then by the time the second and third sites go out to tender, and we were out looking for bids, they were lining up. They were lining up to give us bids because it was demonstrated that you could do this.
And how long was it before UBC started to recognize or realize the financial benefit of this approach to developing housing, but then also have it as a funding mechanism?
I mean, I think at the initial days, in those first few projects, it was really about a funding mechanism because with 2 or 3 projects, you're not getting the sense of community. So the other sort of softer benefits that were more social and other benefits that came along with our development came along the way, but those first few projects out of the gate were really about a financial benefit that UBC was harvesting. Over time, as we built community and started to build the commercial nodes, grocery stores, we have medical, we have
Liquor store,
of course, yeah. The community centers, all the things that are required to build a whole community. Those benefits started to be realized as well, because when Bob started this, you know, I would call UBC was a commuter campus. I mean, life on campus was not that great after lights went out at 5 o'clock sort of thing, and there wasn't much there. If you needed to get groceries, or you're a student even on campus, where did you go? You know, get the milk, get the orange juice, the eggs. There was no place to go. You had to go over to Dunbar. And if you didn't have a car, you were relying on a bus service that was spotty at best. So it's turned, you know, Bob's vision as well was to turn this from what I would call a commuter campus to a campus that it's a 24/7 campus. It's not just vibrant in the wintertime when the students are there. It's vibrant in the summer. It's vibrant after 5 o'clock at night. You could live on campus and not leave for a week and have everything you need. And, you know, I think Westbrook Village is a prime example of part of Bob's vision of a place where you could live, you can walk to almost everything you need. And that was an important part of Bob's vision as well.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. I was there on Sunday evening because I play tennis out at the UBC Tennis Center, and I went into the Save On Foods there, and the lineups everywhere. Like, I had trouble getting a parking spot. The place was just teeming with activity. It's easy now to say that it's an incredible success. So, but as I look at it now, I go, okay, well, how much more can you build? And how are you then being able to address what we know is to be quite a critical housing shortage in Vancouver, the Lower Mainland, and also especially around student housing? How is this making a substantial difference?
Well, you know, through Bob's endeavors and through the endowment that's been built, we've been able to fund through the endowment 10,000 student beds over the years as well. We've built, Properties Trust has built, in addition to student housing, which is quite separate, that's what we do for the university. We also have, we're approaching now 3,000 rental units, 2,200 fully built and occupied. With what's in the pipeline as well, we'll crest 3,000 very soon in terms of built rental units, purpose-built. And 2/3 of that portfolio is below market housing. It's below market rentals, and it's primarily geared towards faculty and staff. So it's a recruitment and retention tool for the university. They recognize we live in an area of where affordability remains to be an issue. The university recruits from all over the world. Most places where people are relocating from, they're maybe, you know, they're relocating from Dallas, Texas, where perhaps, you know, $300,000 buys them a single family home in a leafy, you know, tree-lined suburb, right? But they come here, and that's not going to cut it. So they realize the need to, as a recruitment and retention tool, to be able to tackle the affordability issue primarily for their own needs first of all, but and for the broader community going forward in our land use plan. Our targets going forward, we're even going to increase the targeted amounts of rental and the amounts of below market rental that we're going to deliver.
Was that the original plan, or did this emerge as you started to recognize, well, here's another way that we can meet the needs of the university?
It emerged along the way, because the affordability issue, when the company started in the late 80s, I wasn't here in those early days, but looking at the issues of the day in the late 80s and early 90s, the housing wasn't the issue we're facing today. So primarily properties was set up to build an endowment, and they were going to use this endowment to fund things in the university, research, all kinds of things for the core business of the university. And this was going to fund those needs. But along the way, it was realized that we have this issue of affordability in our city, and so why not use this entity that's been created, a development. We were a development, essentially a developer that happened to be owned by the university. And so we were tasked with the idea of looking at how we could deliver rental housing, both market and below market. And so now, going forward in our land use plan that we just got approved just 2 months ago, an amendment to the land use plan, we are now going to be building 40% of our total entitlement or total density. 40% of it will be rental, and 25% of the total will be below market.
Wow, so that addresses student needs and also staff.
Correct.
There's one other thing that you just touched on, though, is how the funding that has come from this, that flows through the university, was also earmarked for research and development. And if we take a look at the spin-off organizations that have grown out of that then creates an add-on or multiplier effect to the money that's been generated here. How significant is that as a part of your planning up to now and going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's still a need. We're trying to balance the need for building rental, because rental doesn't give us the quick hit of hundreds of millions of dollars if we were to go and sell those prepaid leases to third-party developers. So we realize we're still very focused on building the endowment because of all of the good things that funds and keeps going at the university, but balancing that as well with this need for rental housing. Rental housing over time provides just as much of a financial benefit to the university as what selling a prepaid lease does. It just takes, we don't get the cash up front.
Right,
so
longer timeline.
We're paying down mortgages, but by year 30 or 35, we've ran these financial models, and we know that if you have patience, and had all the patience in the world and didn't have the need for some of this cash more quickly into the endowment, you'd actually be better off building all rental. But so we're trying to balance the financial pressures that the university faces today with some cash needs, as well as housing needs. And so we've arrived at this balance right now where 60% of our density gets sold to third-party developers in the form of prepaid lease, 99-year leases. 40% is going to get built as rental. And of that 40%, or in that, so 25% will be below market, 15% is market rental, and that makes sure 40% of the total.
The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you. How important is this money in the university now starting to realize its ambition of being one of the top 20 universities globally? Because when I take a look at the funding models, let's say that Harvard has, they have endowments from people with remarkable amounts of wealth. We don't have that same tradition here in Canada. So how important is it the property trust is in place to be able to help the university realize its ambitions.
That's exactly right. I think on the Canadian scene, I think it's a little bit different from the models you've cited in the U.S., where wealthy alums sometimes are giving into the billions of dollars into these endowments, and Harvard's sort of one of the at the very vanguard of that. But we don't have that sort of same model here on the Canadian university scene. So having something like this to be able to have already crested $2.2 billion, and the number is growing more quickly as we started off selling prepaid leases for less than $100 per buildable foot, and it's now around the $500 per buildable foot when we sell a prepaid lease. Not that really different to market land, really. Mm-hmm. And so, the second, for example, the second $1 billion that was made a lot more quickly than the first billion, because just the numbers have gotten bigger of the land that we're actually we're selling. So, but this is going to become more and more important, I think, going forward, especially with recent adjustments to the foreign students and international students. The announcement that was made, within the past year. I know all universities were paying very close attention to that, because, as you mentioned at the outset, that has over the years become a funding model for universities. You're using the higher tuition fees that international students pay to fund some of the things that go on at a university, and with the restrictions around that, universities are needing to find innovative and alternate ways to fund what goes on.
So what's the next great big, hairy, audacious idea that's going to, expand what the benefits are of the property trust, and how are you going to get there?
Well, I think transit's going to be a big game changer for us. There's a symbiosis between density and transit. Density can sometimes be a negative word, but to some people, but we need transit and increased density to happen at the same time, and they both need each other to, people that are more focused on transit than I am will tell you this, that they need the density because you need the ridership to pay for this model on an ongoing basis. But also we need transit to defend our ask for higher density. We can't just build density and not get a train out to UBC, because the roads will get more clogged, and we can't clog the roads up anymore. But we are going to be building significantly more density at the university. But the train is the building. The funding for the business case has already been made available, and that's underway. And I think we'll see this. We'll be able to ride the train to UBC by 2030, 2032.
I can't help but look at that hill from where the current new extension of our SkyTrain is going to get us to, and from there up the hill. Is it going to have to be surface rail? And then I think back to Bob Lee talking to then Premier Gordon Campbell about, you want to fund the Canada Line? Go buy all that property first, develop it, take the money. And is that part of the innovative thinking that is at work in helping to ensure that transit line can be extended all the way out to the university?
So your first part of your question is, the technical. That's being looked at right now. The technical aspects of whether or not this thing is an underground or whether it's above ground solution. I think all early studies and early indications are that this is going to be an underground system all the way to UBC. Wow. It currently is being built to Arbutus, and then it will continue along the Broadway to Alma, and then as the ground starts to rise there over the Jericho lands and then up past the golf course, and it would remain underground. I mean, obviously it's going to be rising as well, but underground and hidden, so that the engineers are working on that, and I think there's technical solutions for all of that. How this gets paid for, I think there's density that will come at the local level for some of the local contributions that will need to be made. Recently, most big transit projects in our country have been funded for the past 20 years have been funded around the 40-40-20 model. It's 40% federal money, it's 40% 40% provincial, and that 20% comes from a local governments or local developers. And the local governments who are tasked with that, they in turn usually put development cost charge levies around transit stations to harvest that 20%. So it'll be something similar to that. I think there'll be players along the extension from Arbutus out to Alma. They're the obvious spots where trains would be, probably at McDonald, probably at Alma, and nodes around there. There'll be some sort of levy that the city will be responsible for doing because that's in their jurisdiction. Beyond Blanca, where we are, we're not part of the city of Vancouver. So we're sort of our own little municipality / developer. So obviously, with increased density that we will get, then we will be expected to come up with sort of a similar contribution, just as developers would within the limits of the city.
Well, the great thing is we already have a model of that here in the Greater Vancouver area. You take a look at the extension out to Coquitlam, and you rise up out of Burnaby and down into Coquitlam. It's all there, and then you take a look at the development that has emerged along that. So it's going to work. And the great thing is that you've got innovative and thoughtful minds at work to make sure that this builds out in a way that's going to benefit all. I congratulate you on the amazing work that you're doing, because you're helping to address a variety of issues, and this is the kind of innovative thinking that we need to ensure that Vancouver and of course the university continues to grow.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time today.